Hey everyone, welcome to week 11 in AET 236. This week we are shifting gears a little bit, getting off the energy train and onto the water train. All right, so we're going to do, as you can see, water treatment and wastewater management. This is, of course, building system services class, and this is a really, really important system. So we're kind of looking at the two streams, if you will. If you imagine where you are, wherever you are right now, house, commercial building, whatever, okay? So you, in this building, not necessarily you, but in the building, wastewater is being created. Sinks, bathrooms, if it's at home, whatever, dishwasher, shower, bath, etc., right? So you're creating wastewater, which has to go somewhere. It may not be that dirty. It may be gray water, like bath water, or it may be black water, like toilet water. Now, black water is just a term. It doesn't mean it's black, but we'll go over that this week. The point is, you have this. You're creating this waste stream. It has to go somewhere, and I think you all know that, right? Like you flush the toilet, where does it go? We will answer that question and more this week. So we're kind of looking at those two waste streams. Sorry, the other one is water obviously has to be provided to wherever you are. It doesn't matter whether it's a commercial or residential building, you need fresh water. So where does the water come from, number one? And number two, how do you make it clean enough to be used and drank and used for cooking and all that sort of thing? All right, so we're looking at those two streams. Number one, providing clean, potable water, potable meaning it's drinkable. So potable water to wherever you are. And number two, taking the water from wherever you are, going back into the system. And it's actually kind of a loop, so a lot of that water is cleaned up at water treatment facilities and is actually provided back. So there is a connection between the two. But those are the two. All right, so we're going to look at number one, where does your wastewater go? There's this whole process. And some of it depends on where you are. If you are, a lot of the videos and the information here is based on sewer systems, right? So if you're living in an urban or suburban area, most likely you have a sewer system. Some rural areas, but less so. The other alternative is septic, which is more of a rural issue. I know that in Delaware, for example, they are in the process of removing all septic systems because it's a different process. It's totally fine, but it's just a different, I guess, set of issues that can pop up with those. But we'll go over both of these this week. So again, we'll look at this video. This first one is about where does your wastewater go and what do they do with it in that process. And they go over some of the specific aspects of it, like ozonation, which is a really important way to clean water. Because there's a lot, if you think about it, and there's some pretty, I don't know, graphic points, I guess you could say, in some of these videos, but there's of course solid waste that's both just trash, but also if you think of, from bathrooms. So there's the sort of process to clean out some of the more solid waste, and there's the more chemical-based waste, which is a little trickier because you can't just take like a mechanical sieve or anything like that to get these chemicals out. So that's what like ozonation is part of that process. So there are some chemicals that are added to water in order to clean it up. Chlorine is another one which has a little bit of controversy attached to it, but it is really common to have chlorine in your water supply. All right, so that's the one, and then of course the other end, which some of these other videos provide, is all right, where do we get the water from to provide it to where you are, but how do you clean it up? So there is a lot of water comes from local water bodies like streams and lakes and ponds. It just depends on where you are. So that's part of the some of the videos. A lot of it's groundwater. So in Delaware, for example, a lot of it's groundwater, but there's also a lot of surface water. So where do you get it? How do you clean it up? You go over the reservoirs and how they work. We go over water treatment plants, how they work. Okay. So then you'll get into some of the alternatives. This is mostly based on your book. So there are septic systems. That's one alternative. So there's a video here going over your septic system. But also some, since this course has a lot of green or sustainable building techniques, we'll go over, and again, this is mostly in your book, although there is a video here, reusing water on site. So instead of you'll see after this week, it's a pretty intensive process. You have to, I mean, most of it's gravity fed, sewer systems are gravity fed, but then once you get to the water treatment plant, there's a lot that goes into it. There's pumps and there's mixers and, they're using a bunch of chemicals. So the point is it is pretty resource intensive. It also creates methane, which a lot of facilities do capture. And that harkens back to the energy lessons where if you capture methane because of the anaerobic digestion that's going on, then you can reuse that as just use it as natural gas. But a nice alternative is if you can reuse it on site, you don't even put it in this whole system, you don't put it in a septic system, which requires cleaning and so forth. Is that gray water is one type of system, which is not all that common, but it certainly is a good green building technique. So gray water is just reusing the water on site that's not like, so there's gray water and there's black water basically, and the gray water is sort of your sink water and your water from your bath, whereas black water is more your toilet water. And so with gray water, sometimes you just sort of, it's pretty simple filter, and then you can reuse it mostly. Commercial buildings will sometimes use this to flush the toilets because it's not potable water, right? So you don't want to drink gray water, but if it's filtered, you can use it to irrigate plants. You can use it to flush toilets and so forth. And then black water is something that takes more cleaning, but you can do that. You can also use what's called a composting toilet, which is a pretty interesting application. A lot of well, this isn't used very often, but some living buildings and some really, it's actually pretty simple. I mean, you really just need a pile of sawdust, and then you can put in, toilet, anything from a toilet, human feces, etc., and it'll give it a couple years and it'll actually turn into really good soil, and all the bacteria will clean it up and get rid of any toxins. Anyway, so we'll go over all that, and then the second part is to go over some of the landscaping aspects. So this is just more of a water management aspect, and so we'll look at things like pervious concrete and porous pavement, which is a really interesting application where you actually have in this video, because it does a really good job of explaining this. You have something that looks like concrete. You wouldn't really know. It looks a little bit different than concrete. It's more like sort of porphyritic, if that makes sense to you. Like it's almost, you can see like the gravel that's put together. But there's pervious concrete, and there's actually pervious pavement as well. They really don't look any different, but what's great about them is that water will drain through them pretty readily. And so some areas, so like this is an example in Minnesota where they applied this. So instead of water running off on this impervious surfaces and then running into the sewer system, it'll soak through into the groundwater or some other catchment underneath. And I want to make a special note here because this is a really big issue, especially for a lot of older cities like Philadelphia in particular, but Wilmington also has this problem where they built the sewer system a long time ago, sometimes 100 years ago or more. But over time, obviously, you've had the city that has grown over that 50, 60, 80, 100 years. The problem is the sewer is designed to accommodate a certain amount of water. And as you build up this urban environment, you build more and more impervious surfaces, concrete, blacktop, etc. Okay, buildings. And so because there's more impervious surface covering, there's more water that runs off into the sewer system when it rains. The problem is if it cannot accommodate all of the water, which happens a lot in these cities, including in Wilmington. If it can't handle the amount of runoff into the sewer system because of all these impervious surfaces, it, well, dumps right into the local bodies of water is what it does. I'll never forget when I first moved here in 2007, I was down by the Brandywine Creek where I used to live over there. And I remember seeing the sign. It was like, oh, this is really nice. Got these rocks and a nice little stream, and here's a bridge. and then I see the sign that says, "Don't swim in here." I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it said, "Don't swim in here because if in a in a precipitation event, water may run off or sewer may run off directly into this stream." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" This happens a lot actually, um, and because they have this system called combined sewer overflow, I think it is, and it can only handle a certain amount of water. So this has become a really big problem. Back to what we're looking at here, is that we have this raw sewage, literally raw sewage, that's dumping into local bodies of water. And so one way to mitigate that is to use things like pervious pavement and pervious concrete. Um, Another application then is you can have things like rain gardens. You can have rain barrels. There's other alternatives like you can use rain catchments. Like in Philly, they incentivize. They used to incentivize anyway. You build like a little rain catchment, with big, soil, and then make it like a flower box or a planter box of some kind. That is all to help prevent this overflow. Anyway, so this is something that's certainly become more and more important as we've overdeveloped these cities in these other areas. Okay, so you'll have a pretty good sense of those two systems, right? So the upstream part of water system, building systems with regards to water. So where you're getting your water from, and then where the water goes, and also how to manage it more sustainably, and with less burden on local sewer systems. Okay, so I hope you enjoy the content. The other thing I do want to point out is that there is no in-person lab this week. You have this homework, okay? And so you have all these videos and these readings and so forth. So I try to make a note to make it clear that there are quiz questions based on this. There are quiz questions based on this, okay? And so it really should say homework questions. I'm actually going to change that language. Anyway, so I put all the links here, and just as a reminder of what you're going to be doing, and then there'll be a start quiz button. I don't see it because I'm not a student, but and then you'll see there's just there's more. I want to say like 30, 40 or so questions. So it'll take you some time. So don't wait till the last minute to do this. Okay? But that's everything for this week. Wastewater treatment, freshwater provision, and then just make sure you do the quiz, and then remember that you do not have a lab this week. That is your homework instead of the lab. Okay? Of course, if you have any questions on the content, please ask Ms. Tatiana, and then if you have any questions about the quiz or anything, just let me know. All right? Hope you all have a great week.